and welcome to Friday Finds with Rob Meyer-Kukan.
Hello, welcome once again to Friday Finds. I am Rob Meyer-Kukan, and I thank you for joining us today. I want to welcome to the show my friend and co-owner and instructor at Joy Studio. This is Heather Glidden. How are you today, Heather?
I'm good, Rob. How are you doing?
I'm great. So, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So I think I'm going to start actually with the studio kind of approach, and then I'll kind of talk about myself as we go through that. So, because right now, at the moment, the studio is so much of my life. So Joy Studio is a holistic movement studio. And I sort of got into holistic movement because I had a whole background as a dancer when I was a kid. And then I went through a very long period of chronic unexplained pain. And that was what sort of led me into another way of looking at movement where it wasn't just performative, but was also creating healing in my own life. So when I talk about holistic movement, partly we're talking about looking at the body as a whole, like how does the elbow relate to the shoulder, relate to the back, relate to the hip, but also at the person as a whole. So sort of how are we working with the person, what's going on for them, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally and in their whole lives. So that's a little bit about our idea at the studio.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about, I guess the word is modalities, right?
Mm-hmm.
What modalities are offered through the studio, from the studio, at the studio?
Perfect. So we have a whole variety, and a lot of them are not ones that people will have heard of. I'll give the list, but then I'll talk a little bit about why people might care. So we offer gyrotonic method, gyrokinesis method, Pilates, most people have heard of that one, and yoga. We have for health coaching, we have an excellent massage therapist. That's
Thank
Rob, in case you don't know. And we offer the Franklin method, and we're always pulling in new influences all the time. So our approach at the studio tends to be an integrative approach. So again, if we're looking at how we can support people on all levels, if someone comes in and they say, you know, I love tennis. What I really want to be able to do is just play tennis and feel great in my body when I'm doing it. That is to me, that's a huge way to help support them on the emotional level and on the mental level. It's not just how am I going to get their body to be able to play tennis. Playing tennis is a big part of what gives them joy in their life. And that's why we call the studio Joy. That's really our mission, is to create more joy in the world by helping people to feel great in their bodies. So if I'm looking at that tennis player, I'm going to say, all right, well, what are currently the barriers to feeling great in her body while she's playing tennis? Maybe part of it is building strength, and maybe part of it is building more flexibility, and part of it might be that she has some restrictions. So we might do some gyrotonic movement, which helps to create more expansion and more fluidity in her body and more flexibility. We might do some Pilates that targets some specific muscle strengthening. We will send her to Rob to help address any of those areas of tension or imbalance in her body. And then we might also look at health coaching to see, like, what other dimensions are there? Is there a nutritional dimension to it? Might send her to yoga for a little calming and centering, like help her really focus in on her game. And it all comes together as one big piece to help have her have more joy in her life.
Beautiful. Excellent. And you have said a couple of times, a couple of things that might not be particularly known to everyone who's watching. So could you tell us a little bit, what is gyrotonic?
Yes. So the gyrotonic method is a system of movement that was developed by a Hungarian-born but ethnically Romanian, I'm pretty sure I got that right, check Wikipedia, dancer named Julio Horvath. And he started developing it in the 70s, and then he fleshed it out more in New York in the 80s. Okay. It's a movement system based on circling, spiraling fluid patterns. So if you think about all the joint surfaces in our body are round. We don't move in straight lines. But then you start to think of most of the equipment, like exercise equipment at the gym, tends to have you go in straight lines, forward, back, up, down, side to side. So the way that our bodies are naturally designed to move is in these circular patterns, but so often we're not actually strengthening in those patterns. So we develop these sort of linear planes of motion, but there isn't bridging between them.
Okay.
And so often where people get injured or where there are gaps in the strength is in the bridging between the planes of motion. Okay. So the gyrotonic method helps to create this sort of balanced three-dimensional strength around all the joints and all dimensions. So wow. Wherever you need to go at any moment, you can go there.
Awesome. So it has to do with awareness of how your body moves and works, plus a component of strengthening.
Yes,
well.
Absolutely. And there is a large piece of equipment that we use to help facilitate that. And it can add tension and resistance, which is what people are very familiar with exercise equipment doing, but it also adds an element of helping to guide and support the body. So if there's a place that normally doesn't move as easily or has become a little bit inhibited or shut down, then it can help to guide you back into that place of movements that you then can create flexibility, strength, anything that you are needing more of in that area.
Cool. And I have some video clips that you sent to me of some folks, maybe you even, doing some of the movements on some of the equipment that you've talked about. And I'll sort of scroll them through while we're talking a little bit, so people can see you and the method and the equipment being used. So those will sort of start flowing through now as we continue to talk.
That sounds great. Yeah, it's a little hard to understand just from the words. You kind of have to see it, and then even you kind of have to experience it to really start feeling like, oh, what's this really about in my body? So
yeah. And we have talked about this quite a bit in passing and whatnot. And a lot of the folks who are watching this show are performing artists and musicians. And I just think there's amazing implications for musicians and performing artists for this method. I think it would be.
So the thing that I think that I'm sure that the performing artists and musicians recognize this about themselves, at least I hope they do, but I don't know if it's necessarily widely recognized, and especially not with the training, is that performing artists of any kind, musicians count in this, are using their bodies at a very high level. Their bodies need to be able to perform at a high level. And so cross-training the body for that kind of performance can be really important to help support them in staying healthy and staying healthy and having longevity in their careers. So I think that's a big piece.
Yeah, and I love hearing you say that. That's one of the things that inspires and has inspired me with the directions that I'm moving in and the areas that I continue to grow and develop and study in, is this: how do we make our instruments? I oftentimes tell musicians, your body is your instrument, not just the physical musical instrument. How do we educate ourselves to prevent injuries? And the phrase I often use is the lifetime of music making. I don't know if that's mine or if I stole that or wherever, but it totally works. It totally works with that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. So you also said gyrokinesis. What is that? How is it the same? How is it different? Are they the same?
They're kind of a part of the same overall method. Gyrokinesis is based on all the same principles as the gyrotonic method, but it doesn't use the large piece of equipment. Okay. So gyrokinesis classes tend to be group classes. And we do a lot of private training at the studio, and then we have small group classes. So gyrokinesis classes are usually small groups, and part of the class is done seated on a chair, part of it is done standing, and part of it is on the floor. So instead of using a piece of equipment for resistance, you're more just working with your own body weight and gravity, and how you can stay connected and still expand the body with that type of a situation.
Very cool. This may be sort of an odd question without being in the space, but you have, at the studio at least, there are, I believe, 3 sort of main pieces of equipment. One, the towers, the arch, and then what's the one with the sliding?
The jumping stretching board.
The jumping stretching board, awesome. So could you tell us just a little bit about that equipment, how it came to be, and
Yes. So I can tell you a fun story about Julio actually for the tower. So gyrokinesis, the part without any of the equipment, came first. And Julio took that to New York, and he was teaching that, and he was looking around the room and seeing like, people just aren't quite getting what I want them to get here. So that's where he started getting creative and thinking, how can I get them to feel what it is I want them to feel? And so he was walking down the street one day in New York in the 70s, maybe 80s, maybe still 70s. And there was a bar stool. Like somebody had just put it out on the curb to be taken away for the trash. This is not a nice bar stool, but it had a little spinny top on it. Okay. And so he was like, I can do something with that. So he found that, and somewhere he found another bar stool, and he took them home, and he disassembled them, and he reassembled them, and that became the little handle unit that we use.
Oh, wow.
So that was the first version, was bar stools that he found on the street in New York City. And then everything else just gradually developed from there. So the tower, the gyrotonic tower, is usually the main piece that we start people on because it creates that's a little more supportive, a little bit more guiding for the movement. The jumping stretching board, the one with has slidey things, is really unique because most exercise equipment, like we were talking about, most exercise equipment is about creating resistance and how do you work against resistance. Mm-hmm. And what the jumping stretching board does is it actually takes away all resistance. So then it becomes about how do you keep your body connected and hold everything together when if you didn't, it would all slide apart. And then the archway that you mentioned, that actually first started as a painter's ladder.
Okay.
That was the initial archway, was literally just a painter's ladder.
Wow.
And then gradually he attached more things and changed the shape of it. But that one is about you hang on in lots of different ways. It's the jungle gym of the equipment. Okay. So that one is about how can you, again, keep your body connected so you don't just let everything hang and be totally disconnected, but while you're lengthening and while you're expanding in the body.
Wow. I think one of the things that I like the most about the equipment at the studio is also how aesthetically pleasing it is. Yeah. They are like works of art, and I'll have some pictures of them scrolling through as well in the space of the studio so that you all can see it as we're talking. They're really, really cool. Even the physical equipment models the philosophy and theory behind it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think they look like pieces of beautiful sculpture, although it is a little bit of a personality test. People tend to come in and they say one of three things. They say either that looks like a torture device, or they say that looks like playground equipment, or they say that looks like sculpture. So then I kind of know, like, all right, what's the mindset we're starting with, and I can work from there.
That's really cool. That's awesome. Well, how can people find out more about Joy Studio?
So the easiest place is to go to our website, joyannarbor.com. They are also always welcome to stop by. We're at 214 South Main Street. If we're with the client, then we may just give you a wave and a hello, but we definitely love seeing new faces in the studio. So either one of those is great.
And you also have social media?
Why, thank you for reminding me. We do. We have Facebook. And I think the link is Joy, Freedom, and Motion. But if you look for Joy and Arbor, then you can find that on Facebook. And we're also on Instagram. And that one is at Joy and Arbor.
Very cool. Awesome. And I'll make sure that those addresses are in the description, or if you're watching on social media, it'll be in the comments section below. Yeah, if you are in Ann Arbor, the studio is in a fantastic location right on Main Street, near to all sorts of really great shops and food. And so, yeah, it's a cool place. People should come in and check it out. So what's the best way to reach you if they have questions or want to chat with you a little bit and learn some more?
Yes, so the email address for the studio is studio@joyannarbor.com. So that one is probably the best. Or our phone number is, you're going to post it our phone number you'll post.
I will run it across the bottom here so people can see that.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Good. So the way I like to end all of my interviews is by asking my guests to share with us some words of wisdom. And I say, give us the best piece of advice you were ever given, and it can be silly or it can be serious. It can be related to what we're talking about or completely off the wall. So would you share with us some words of wisdom?
Yes, I will. It will take a very brief preface. So I had mentioned a while back that I had a lot of problems with chronic pain when I was a kid. And I was also a very serious dancer when I was a kid, but I ended up quitting dance because of the pain. And that was a really difficult thing for me. So then years later, I ran into one of my dance teachers and I was sort of talking to her about this. And she said, well, I mean, anything can be a dance. And it sort of just shifted my whole perspective about my life and thought. So I started to think, well, what is it that I loved about dance? And it was this feeling of being able to have a sort of expression and freedom and just how it made me feel. And so then I started looking for, okay, how could I create that in my business or in my teaching or in my marriage or with my dogs, and just kind of bring that sense of dance into everything. So, and then it sort of, as I shared that with people, it expanded out. So it wasn't just anything can be dance. It was anything could be a meditation, or maybe anything could be a song, or you could apply anything that you loved to that.
Oh, I love that. That's absolutely beautiful. And we are recording this video right near the end of the year. It'll come out after the first of the year, but that's a beautiful way to end the year. It's a beautiful way to start the year, as people will get to watch this when it goes live. So thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you for sharing your story too.
Thank you so much it's been lovely talking with you today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So if you are watching this video and you like the content, give it the thumbs up. If you are not already done so, please click the subscribe button and subscribe to my channel. That way you get to know exactly when everything is coming out. Every Friday Finds videos will come out. If you want to know more about the other stuff that I've got going on, follow me on social media. All of my social media is found at Rob Meyer-Kukan, so at Rob Meyer-Kukan, and that stuff is in the description below as well. I want to say thank you once again to Heather for being my guest today, and thank you very much. And if you are watching this on Friday, have a wonderful weekend. If you're watching it at another time, have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and thanks for tuning in. Thank you again, Heather, and we'll see everyone later. Bye.
Join me next week when I interview Ina Lai, who is the conductor of the Estonian handbell ensemble Campanelli.